Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Madeline Bowman. I'm a statewide organizer at the ACLU of Florida, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion. As the 2026 legislative session gets underway, Florida is stepping into a year crowded with competing headlines and high-stakes debates. But beneath the noise, what happens in the weeks ahead will shape daily life across our state and determine whether our communities move forward with more freedom or face new barriers. Florida has been at the center of some of the relentless attacks on civil liberties in the country, from government censorship and near total abortion bans to restrictions on voting access and laws targeting immigrants and LGBTQ+ communities. Year after year, we've seen politicians try to roll back rights, and if there's one thing we know from experience, it's that showing up matters. We've done it before, and we're doing it again. This session, we're meeting the moment with courage and with each other, because when we rise together, we're stronger. And when we show up in numbers, leaders are forced to answer to the people. Tonight, you'll hear from ACLU of Florida experts on the biggest legislative threats we're tracking: voting rights, reproductive freedom, censorship and education, attacks on immigrants, and efforts to undermine local control. We'll break down what's moving, what it means for Floridians, and how we're fighting back to defend our constitutional rights. To kick us off, we'll do a round of brief introductions before we dive into our questions. And I do just want to note one of our panelists is having some tech issues. She will be on a little bit later, but we'll start off with Bacardi Jackson and then Kara Gross.
Thank you so much, Madeline. It's wonderful to be here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Bacardi Jackson, the Executive Director for the ACLU of Florida.
Hi, thank you so much for having us all, and we're excited to be here with you. I'm Kara Gross. I am the Interim Political Director of the ACLU of Florida, and I'm looking forward to talking with you all tonight.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll kick it off. The 2026 legislative session is officially underway, and this year has already brought a flood of overwhelming headlines. For folks joining us tonight, what are the stakes we face, and what does it mean for everyday Floridians?
Well, I'll jump in here. And the truth is, there's a lot at stake right now. What happens in Tallahassee, unfortunately, doesn't just stay in Tallahassee. It shows up in our homes, our schools, our clinics, our workplaces, and in whether or not all of us feel safe speaking up or simply trying to live our lives. This session will shape how free, how protected, how heard Floridians feel and are for years to come. And I want to be honest about the moment we're in. Our democracy is under real strain. We're seeing coordinated efforts here in Florida and nationally. And it's an effort to overwhelm people with chaos, to divide communities against each other, and to normalize the idea that power matters more than rights. In that kind of environment, business as usual just won't cut it. It's not enough. Defending the Constitution requires something harder: an unshakable belief that democratic norms and basic freedoms are still worth the fight. They are worth fighting for, even when we're exhausted. We learned that in 2025. We saw that we could slow down unconstitutional policies before they took effect. We could limit the harm when courts weren't able to immediately block everything. And we could defeat overreach with lawsuits, with public pressure and sustained organizing. And we also saw something else that matters just as much. When people are given a clear path on how to act, they do. People showed up in 2025, tens of thousands learning their rights, hundreds of thousands stepped into volunteer work, and millions made it clear in the streets and in their communities that they reject attacks on freedom and on our democracy. That same spirit shows up in Florida again and again because Floridians understand what's at stake when the government interferes with our freedoms and communities are scapegoated. So, yes, tonight we are discussing what's being proposed at the Capitol, but we're also talking about what we refuse to accept. Tonight is about whether government works for people and whether it is directed by the people. That's what democracy is. That's what we signed up for. That's the democracy that every single elected official agreed, raised their hand, agreed to defend and protect, as it's reflected in the Declaration of Independence that we're celebrating 250 years for this year, and in both our state and our federal constitutions. But far too often, we have seen politicians breach those oaths, and they choose political ambition over the real needs of everyday Floridians. And when that happens, families pay the price, and rights and freedoms of we the people are scaled back. But history is clear about this. Rights don't protect themselves. And we should name what's coming. This session and even the years ahead may test us in ways we cannot imagine. We are already seeing signs of new efforts to disenfranchise voters, as if there weren't already enough on the table. And that includes mid-decade redistricting and other suppression schemes that are designed to pre-decide election outcomes before people ever cast a ballot. Now, that's not abstract. That's not some theory out there. That's about whether communities, all communities, including communities of color, young voters, immigrants, and working families, get a real say in our futures. When people are oppressing our right to vote, our say is silenced. But here's the grounded hope. We are not powerless. Courage isn't in one single moment. It's the discipline of showing up, of telling the truth, and refusing to sit on the sidelines even when it feels like the odds are stacked against us. People with real responsibilities, families, homes in flood zones and hurricane paths, school-aged children, aging parents, medical needs, college tuition, real responsibilities. People can't afford the political games of the rich and powerful few. And silence is not neutral. It's complicity. It gives permission. And that's why this session matters so much. We have a choice: stand on the sidelines or rise together and demand accountability. Because when everyday Floridians show up again and again, we do shift the power. We force leaders to remember who they answer to, the people of Florida, not their own political ambition. So the stakes are real, and so is our power. And if we keep our momentum, we stay connected across the lines that people are trying to use to divide us, and we keep turning outrage into action, we can protect what matters now, and we can build a Florida where every person has dignity, rights, and a voice in our shared future.
Thank you so much, Bacardi, for setting the scene. I think that's something we all really need to hear right now. So thank you for those remarks. I'm also happy to see that Pamela was able to join us. So I'll hand it over to Pamela if you want to introduce yourself. Pamela, I think you're muted.
Well, I certainly want everyone to hear me now that I'm here. And thank you so much, Madeline, and good evening, everyone. Many thanks for the opportunity to really get into a fighting mode here as we get ready for the 2026 legislative session. I am Pamela Birch Fort, the strategic consultant for ACLU Florida. And for well over 10 years, I've had the pleasure of being in Tallahassee with ACLU Florida, and fighting on behalf of all of you out there. And I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. Especially, I enjoy being on the ground with Kara Gross and with Madeline Bowman. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we're so glad to have your expertise with us tonight. So I'll turn over to my second question. Even though session has just started, some bills are already moving fast. Earlier today, the House passed HB 289, which critics have called an abuser's right to sue bill. What does it do? Why is it being fast tracked? And what would it mean for Floridians if it does become law?
Yeah, I'll take that. And thank you, Madeline. This is a bill that we have been fighting for several sessions, and we have managed to defeat it the past two sessions, but they keep bringing it back. And the fact that it's only the third day of session and they passed it on the House floor shows that they mean business. A little context about the bill. This is by the same sponsor, one of the same sponsors who brought us the 6-week abortion ban. So that sort of sets the context for what this bill is about. This bill is designed to make it so that no healthcare providers will provide abortion care in the state because they will be too worried about being sued, and that no family and friends will feel comfortable helping their loved ones access an abortion because they fear that they could be sued. This bill is incredibly dangerous, and it's concerning for anyone in Florida who is currently pregnant or who may be pregnant at some time in the future, and all of us who love and care about those people. This bill is so broadly worded that it would allow anyone who impregnates someone else to bring a lawsuit for unlimited damages against healthcare providers and hospitals providing abortion care and against the friends and family members who helped their loved ones access such care. And these are not hypothetical situations. We have seen dangerous wrongful death cases like this brought in Texas and Arizona. In Texas, under a similar bill, an abusive partner sued 3 friends of his now ex-wife for $1 million each for their assistance with helping her access abortion medication. And in Arizona, an abusive partner accompanied his then wife to her abortion appointment, and then 2 years later, following their divorce, he filed a wrongful death suit alleging that there was improper informed consent for his ex-wife's abortion. The bill sponsors and supporters that are trying to sell this bill to the public are calling it a wrongful death for an unborn child act. And they do that because they want it to seem very sympathetic. They want to be able to pass this bill, so they are naming it things that are going to make the public think that it is something that should be passed. They are saying that this bill will provide relief to expecting parents who lose a pregnancy due to the wrongful act of someone else. That's how they talk about this bill. But the thing they don't talk about is that under current Florida law, parents can already sue for their pain and suffering when they lose a pregnancy due to someone else's wrongful act. So this bill is not necessary for that purpose. What current Florida law does not cover, and what this bill would do, is allow for any person who impregnates another to bring a cause of action against the healthcare provider and the friends and families of individuals who helped their loved one access abortion care. Make no mistake, this dangerous bill will lead to OBGYNs and hospitals delaying and denying care for pregnant patients out of fear of being sued for unlimited damages. And while it passed the House, we were able to get bipartisan opposition to this bill. And this is a big deal in this polarized legislature. It is not often that we see bipartisan opposition to these types of bills. And so the fact that we were able to do that today is a big deal. And it shows that the work that everyone here is doing to highlight the harms of this bill and the impact on healthcare and pregnant patients, it matters, it's making a difference, and they are hearing it. Also, the good news is that it has only passed one committee in the Senate so far. So we need to keep up the constant drumbeat against this bill. We need to make sure that the Senate does not hear it a second time.
Thank you so much, Kara. And for everyone on here tonight, please keep up with our legislative alerts. We definitely want to track this bill, make some noise about it. So we'll definitely keep everyone posted as this session continues. So beyond opposing HB 289, what proactive reproductive rights bills should Floridians be tracking this session? And what are the most effective ways for people to help advance them?
I'll take that as well because I love talking about this bill. I'm very excited to share, for those who do not know it yet, that Senator Tracy Davis and Representative Fentress Driscoll have filed a comprehensive Reproductive Freedom Act bill, and reproductive justice partners across the state are working on this bill as well. So this bill, SB 1308 or HB 1511, the Reproductive Freedom Act, it would repeal Florida's extreme near total abortion ban and ensure that Floridians have the freedom to make the full range of decisions about their reproductive health care without government interference. The bill provides that every individual who becomes pregnant has a fundamental right to make their own health care decisions about whether to continue their pregnancy, and that the state may not deny or interfere with an individual's fundamental right to access reproductive health care. The bill also provides that individuals have a fundamental right to make their own decisions about birth control and in vitro fertilization, because these decisions belong to people who can get pregnant and not the state. The bill also prohibits the state from criminalizing healthcare providers or other individuals who assist a pregnant person with exercising their fundamental rights. And finally, the bill makes clear that a fertilized egg or an embryo or a fetus does not have independent legal rights separate from the person who is pregnant, and that medical decisions will be made first and foremost to protect the pregnant person's health and safety, and that Floridians won't be denied care just because they are pregnant. And this is important because 57% of Floridians voted to end Florida's 6-week abortion ban. And that is a mandate of Floridians on our legislative leaders. And while it was not enough to pass the very high threshold for a constitutional amendment, it is absolutely enough for our legislators to act. This shows our legislators that the majority of Floridians want this. And if they don't act on this, then we, the people, get to hold them accountable during elections. You asked Madeline about what people can do in this moment, and this is exactly what they can do. They can ask their legislators to co-sponsor this bill. And if their legislators will not co-sponsor it, then we have their answer of whether or not they think that individuals should be able to make these decisions on their own without state interference. And you can educate your friends and families to push for it and to ask their legislators. And stay tuned, because we will be having a press conference in the next week or two about this bill and more ways that folks can get involved.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I love to see these proactive bills, and also a call to action for everyone tonight. So make sure that you are contacting your legislators and following up about this bill. So now I'll turn to voting. We're seeing several voting related bills this session that would make it harder for Floridians to participate in our elections. Can you walk us through the proposals raising the most concern? What would they change? Who would be most impacted? And why we're opposing them?
Well, thank you, Madeline. And there has been a cascade of voting rights bills filed and enacted practically every year under this current administration. These measures have made it very difficult to access the ballot box. Many know of the measures that reduce the number of drop boxes available. They reduce the number of early voting sites. We've had bills requiring returning citizens to pay fines and fees before they could vote. We've had bills in recent years attacking 3PVRO organizations, which we know are third-party voter registration organizations. Bills imposing excessive fines and fees, sometimes for just simple mistakes, and creating a special law enforcement unit to intimidate voters. Now, it could even get worse for some voters. This year, House Bill 991 and its Senate companion 1334 may impact in-person voting by requiring first-time voters to provide what's known as documentary proof of citizenship, meaning these first-time voters must prove they are citizens by presenting either a U.S. passport or perhaps a birth certificate before voting. Most voters don't have these documents readily available, and while they can be accessed, they are very expensive to acquire. Low-income voters, students, the elderly, people with disabilities, and communities of color are most often impacted by these types of provisions. And there is no credible evidence that non-citizens are even voting in Florida. And there is no evidence that these suggested measures will do anything to improve election security. So this bill is very problematic. Another measure is House Bill 985. Right now, there is no Senate companion, but we may see it later. This measure requires supervisors of elections to verify an applicant's citizenship status if a Florida driver license or an ID card is used to register to vote. And then the supervisor of elections can refer false affirmations to the Office of Elections, Crimes, and Securities, often for investigation and maybe even prosecution. More importantly, this bill eliminates IDs previously accepted at polling places, such as student identification cards, retirement center identification cards, and neighborhood association identification cards. All of these photo ID cards have been in use for many, many years. We know this measure will have serious negative impacts, mostly among our young voters and college students. Imagine not being able to register to vote using your student ID. This bill will also start the process of marking all driver's license or IDs for non-citizens with the letters NC on the front to denote non-citizen status. And remember, there's even no credible evidence that non-citizens are voting in Florida.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for walking us through those bills. On the flip side, there are bills this session that would strengthen access to the ballot and protect voters' rights. What are the key voting rights bills we're supporting, and how would they make it easier for eligible Floridians to vote and have their voices heard?
Well, it is exciting to know that there are some positive things, some positive bills being filed that would improve access to the ballot box. One bill that we have been working on for a while now is the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Florida Voting Rights Act of 2026. And that is Senate Bill 1598 and House Bill 1419. Now, this bill is named to honor a couple from Brevard County who were killed in 1951 by a bomb placed under their home by the KKK. They were killed on Christmas Day, which was also their wedding anniversary, simply because they were registering voters. So we chose to name this very positive measure in their honor. This landmark legislation filed for the third consecutive year. This year it's been filed by State Senator LaVon Bracy Davis of Orlando and newly elected State Representative Rashawn Young, also of Orlando. But this measure establishes comprehensive statewide voting rights protections modeled after the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965 by restoring safeguards weakened by recent U.S. Supreme Court decisions, and it rolls back many of the voter suppression measures filed in the last few years. This bill expands access to the voting box by allowing same-day registration, something we have hoped for in Florida for a long time. Implementing automatic voter registration through the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, unless voters opt out of the system. Right now, you have to opt in. This bill would require you to opt out. And strengthening protections against discriminatory voting practices. That is one of the main bills that we will be voting on, focused on this year, and hope that we can get the legislature to agenda it and give us an opportunity to discuss it. One other major bill is a disaster-affected voter Bill of Rights. It is Senate Bill 1416 and House Bill 1191. Florida has in the past been severely affected by natural disasters just prior to an election. This bill expands voter protections and access to elections during and after natural disasters, such as hurricanes, floods, and other declared emergencies. The bill ensures that voters displaced by disasters are not disenfranchised due to polling place closures, relocation, or disrupted election administration. It provides flexibility in voting procedures and strengthens election continuity planning to protect the right to vote during emergency conditions. This too is a bill that we've been working on for a number of years, and I think we have a really good chance of getting it agended and moved forward this year. And one major element is included in Senate Bill 132 and House Bill 73. This is the restoration of voting rights database. And many of you know, in 2018, Florida citizens passed Amendment 4 that allows certain returning citizens to vote after completing their sentences. The legislature later imposed criteria requiring returning citizens to pay all fines and fees before registering to vote, without even providing a means to verify the fees that are owed. This measure establishes a publicly accessible statewide database that allows Floridians with a felony conviction to easily determine their eligibility to vote. The bill addresses long-standing confusion created by Florida's complex rights restoration system by providing clear, accurate, and centralized information. By increasing transparency and reducing uncertainty, the legislature helps ensure eligible voters are not unlawfully disenfranchised and promotes confidence and participation in the democratic process. And I know that Bacardi mentioned this in her comments, but let me mention that there's a major push to redraw congressional districts in an effort to keep Congress under one-party rule. In 2010, 63% of Floridians voted to place redistricting standards in our Constitution that prevents the legislature from drawing districts to favor one party. But that's exactly what this mid-decade effort is all about. In Florida, it is unconstitutional, and we're working hard to get the word out that the people have already spoken. They do not want mid-decade redistricting. But be aware and stay tuned. Governor DeSantis has already called a special session to begin on April 20th for the purpose of redrawing these districts. And again, you've asked what voters can do, what our citizens can do. You can contact your legislator and say you do not favor mid-decade redistricting. Thanks, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Pamela, and thank you for walking us through all this really important legislation. And reminding folks, we got to keep up the fight through April, so rest. We have a long road ahead of us. So, across the country and here in Florida, we're seeing the real life impact of unjust immigration practices and policies. This session, which bills would deepen harm for immigrant communities, and what would they mean for access to education, jobs, and stability for Florida families?
Yeah, I'll take that. And thank you, Madeline. As everybody here watching knows, Florida's communities are under attack. The governor and the majority in the legislature have enacted cruel policies that harm Floridians and have chosen to divert millions of taxpayer dollars from the dire needs of our state and instead use that money to tear apart families and destabilize communities. There have been several anti-immigrant bills that have been filed. I'm just going to talk about a few of them here because I know that we don't have all the time, but I'm happy to talk about them any other time as well. Just today, making sure everybody is aware that, again, this is the third day of session, and they have fast-tracked an anti-immigrant bill that had already passed all of its committees before session even started and was heard on the House floor today and passed the House floor today. And this is a cruel anti-immigrant bill, HB 197, that mandates an error-prone e-verify system for private employers. And this system, having to use this system, would make it harder for small businesses, for mom and pop shops, to be able to hire immigrant workers. And this could lead to US citizens and non-citizens alike not being able to work and support their families due to the inaccuracies of this database that now small businesses are being required to use. We are also monitoring and opposing another harmful anti-immigrant bill with regard to education access. This bill is SB 1052 and HB 1279. This bill would bar Floridians who cannot prove lawful residence in the United States from enrolling in public colleges and universities, from enrolling in GED programs, and from taking English as a second language courses. So I'm just going to repeat that for a second, because under this bill, you need to prove that you have lawful presence in the United States in order to have access to education, including English as a second language courses. This bill is so dangerous. Not only does it attack our immigrant communities, it also removes statutory requirements for gender equity plans in college athletics, and it imposes burdensome documentation requirements for tuition exemptions based on homelessness. This legislation restricts educational access, worsens inequality, and undermines workforce development and economic mobility statewide. Another anti-immigrant bill that has been filed is HB 35 and SB 1370. And this bill imposes harsher penalties than already exist on driving without a license. So there are already penalties in Florida law for driving without a license. There are already penalties in Florida law for repeat driving without a license. This increases those penalties so that they are now harsher. And this is devastating to immigrant communities because under Florida law, undocumented immigrants are not allowed under Florida law to have a driver's license. Our laws prevent them from having driver's licenses. And so on the one hand, we are making it so people can't have a driver's license. We are punishing them for driving without a license, but we are completely ignoring the realities of living in Florida, is that Florida is a very much of a car culture. And so if you want to drive your kids to school, you need to be able to drive them to school and you need to be able to have a license. If you need to be able to pick them up to school, if you need to go to doctor's appointments, if you need to take your family to a doctor appointment, these are all things that this bill is cruelly designed to make it so much harder for our communities to live and work and access healthcare in Florida. And Florida is home to nearly 5 million immigrants. And these are our family members, our neighbors, our coworkers, our agricultural workers, and the backbone of critical industries. And again, our legislature has been pushing bills that completely disregard the humanity of our communities.
Thank you, Kara. And this is just, I think, a good reminder of what we're up against this session and how we just need to support our immigrant friends, neighbors, and community all throughout the session to stop these bills. At the same time, some bills would move Florida in a very different direction towards safety, dignity, and accountability. What immigration bills are we supporting this session, and how would they protect families, expand access to essential services, and strengthen trust in our communities?
Thank you. Yes. And I always like talking about the proactive bills because even though there are a lot of bad bills, there are a lot of really great bills. And there are a lot of legislative champions that care about freedom and that care about human rights and that care about all the things that we care about. There's just fewer of them in the legislature. But, that's where we are right now. But they are there and there are champions there. And we want to be able to lift up the hard work that everybody's doing to make Florida an actual free state where everybody can live freely and with dignity. So one of those great bills is the Florida Economic Prosperity and Immigration Act. And this is SB 328 and HB 315. And this bill it's a comprehensive bill, and it would repeal so many of the harmful laws that have disproportionately harmed Florida immigrant communities and limited access to essential services. And those bills are bills that have passed over the past couple of sessions, and this bill would seek to repeal those bills so that they no longer exist in Florida law. The bill would ensure that Florida residents, regardless of their immigration status, that they can access health care and employment opportunities and education and state-issued driver's licenses. These are just basic dignities that all people in Florida should be able to access. And that's what this bill does. It is not, it's the least we can do to lift up all of Floridians is to make sure that everybody has access to these basic needs. By removing exclusionary barriers, the legislation promotes public safety, it promotes economic stability, and it promotes the well-being of families and communities across the state. Another bill that we are also excited about is a bill that would, again, repeal one of the terrible things that happened last session where they took away in-state tuition waivers for immigrants that aren't able to prove their lawful presence in the United States. And this bill would basically make it so that all Florida students who complete high school in Florida and who live in our state, that they all have the same opportunities available to them to attend our colleges with the same tuition. It makes it so that immigrants are not discriminated against because they can't prove that they are lawful permanent residents, and allows Florida residents who have lived here and completed high school and live in our state to be able to go to college.
Thank you so much, Kara, and very exciting to see these pieces of legislation. Now I'll turn to our free speech space. From K through 12 schools to college campuses, there's been a lot of debate about what can be taught, said, or even displayed. How would the bills moving this session change what students and educators are allowed to talk about? And what's at stake for learning, curiosity, and honest conversation?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that. I mean, over the past sessions, we have seen this governor and legislature take away our freedoms. Every session for the past couple of sessions, there are more and more bills that restrict our free speech and restrict our expression. There are several concerning bills this session that we are tracking and opposing. One of these bills would actually criminalize political speech and activities in K through 12 public schools. Yes, it would prohibit and criminalize certain political activities and speech in K through 12 public schools. So we're beyond talking about, just, mild censorship. We are now talking about actual criminal penalties. Another bill that keeps coming back year after year, we keep being able to defeat it and they keep bringing it back, is a bill that would ban displays of certain flags that the governor and the majority in the legislature don't like to have in our schools and in our public buildings. It bans local governments and public schools and public universities from displaying flags. And I'll talk about flags in a second because they don't really define flags. Flags could be anything, including, if you're in an elementary school and a kid draws a picture of a rainbow flag, it could possibly prevent a teacher from displaying that image, that picture in the hallways of the school. These are the types of things that our legislature is spending their time on instead of spending time on helping Floridians. It would impact pride flags. It would impact Black Lives Matter flags. But, interesting, of course, it creates an exception for other types of historically or officially recognized flags, which could possibly mean a protection for Confederate flags. Another bill that along these same lines that prohibits protected speech in universities is SB 1736 or HB 725. This bill would impose unnecessary and overly burdensome restrictions on protected speech at public colleges and universities. It would require prior institutional approval before engaging in expressive activities, creates barriers to free speech and protest and assembly. So you need to have prior approval in order to speak. You can quickly see how that becomes a very dangerous slippery slope. These requirements invite censorship, chill student and faculty expression, and conflict with longstanding First Amendment principles.
Thank you, Kara. And I know this is very concerning to so many people, to so many students, professors, teachers, seeing more attacks to their rights. And I also just wanted to uplift any college students who are here with us tonight. We have an ACLU college campus initiative where we are building clubs on campus to protect these rights, defend these rights. We're not on every campus yet. So if you are interested in helping start a club at your university, you can visit our college campus initiative on our ACLU Florida website and register a club through us. So I did want to just plug that as well. I know we'll be tracking this legislation throughout session, but there's also so many ways for folks to make a difference during session and outside of it. We have a free speech volunteer team that does amazing Know Your Rights work. Lots of educators are in that space. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please join us. And now moving into attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, we have seen several bills this session that would allow discrimination in healthcare settings and weaken protections for LGBTQ plus people in public and nonprofit workplaces. How would these proposals affect someone's ability to live, work, and seek care with dignity? And what message do they send about whose rights and well-being are being protected in Florida?
Yeah, thank you for that, Madeline. Over the past several years, as everybody here I'm sure knows, the legislature has continued to attack our freedom to bodily autonomy and continues to seek to control who we are, how we express ourselves, and who we can love. And this session seems like they are just continuing that pattern of abuse. One of the bills that we are tracking and opposing is a harmful LGBTQ plus bill that would harm government employees. This is SB 1642 and HB 641. This bill creates hostile and exclusionary work environments for LGBTQ plus individuals employed by the state and employed by local governments or organizations that receive state funding. So it is very comprehensive and very broad. Again, that affects state employees, local government employees, or organizations that receive state funding. The bill prohibits employers from requiring training related to gender identity and sexual orientation. It emboldens harassment and discrimination in the workplace, and it shields employees who engage in hostile conduct from accountability. These provisions weaken workplace protections for all Floridians. They undermine inclusive employment practices, and they make it more difficult for LGBTQ plus Floridians to thrive in public service and nonprofit roles. In the interest of time, I think I'm going to move on from that.
All right. Thank you so much, Kara. And thank you just for breaking those down for us. So lastly, for viewers trying to make sense of everything we've discussed tonight, from voting and immigration to reproductive freedom, education, and free speech, what's one thing people should remember about how these issues connect and what they reveal about the kind of democracy we're building in Florida?
Well, I'll jump in. If there's one thing that viewers should remember, it's that these aren't all separate fights. All of these issues are interconnected. And it's one question that we have to ask ourselves: who gets to belong? Who gets to have a say in our democracy? Voting, immigration, reproductive freedom, education, and free speech, they all come back to power. When leaders make it harder to vote, when they target immigrants, when they interfere in private medical decisions, when they censor what can be taught, or when they punish our ability to protest, that's not random. That's a pattern. It's about shrinking the circle of who counts and making it harder for everyday people to have a voice or to push back. And what that reveals is the kind of democracy being built. Is it one where rights are treated like privileges, granted to some, withheld from others, and where disagreement is treated like a threat? That's not what democracy is supposed to be. Rights don't depend on where you were born, what you believe, or whether you're politically convenient. Here's the part people should hold on to. When we see the connection, we stop feeling isolated. We realize none of this is just about my issue. And it's not about whether it's somebody else over there. It's about whether Florida is a place where everyone has dignity, freedom, and a real voice. Who are we Floridians? Who are we going to claim this state to be? We get to decide that, not just a handful of people. So the takeaway is simple. They want us overwhelmed. They want us divided. Our power is staying connected. It's showing up. It's refusing to let anyone make our rights negotiable. And that is so critical. And I just want to throw it back over to Pamela, because I know you have seen this over and over again in cycles in the legislature. And I know what you have seen too is the power of the people. I would love for you to just give us a little insight into what you have seen work. When people show up, how is it that they can show up and really make a difference?
Thank you, Bacardi. And you are correct. As many people who may be viewing tonight, perhaps you know that I am entering my 47th consecutive legislative session. And it's always shocking when I say that out loud. But yes, you have mentioned that power makes the difference. And I often ask when I'm talking to audiences, I ask them, well, what is power? It is at least two things. It is control and it is advantage. If you have power, you can control anything. And if you can control anything, you have the advantage into everything. And we are doing this work on behalf of the people in a supermajority environment. And that makes it difficult to pass common sense legislation. But what really makes the difference here is people. And as you've said, Bacardi, people have the power. And when there have been major pushback in the legislature, it's not just from those of us walking the halls of the Capitol. It's from all of you in the audience. You make the difference. Your calls, your emails, your visits, that can make a difference. You have the power, and we are here encouraging you to use it. And this would be the session to put it to its best use. You've heard all the bills that Kara has spoken of. You've heard the bills that I've talked about this evening. But the main takeaway here is what Bacardi has placed, hopefully, in your mind and in your heart, is your power. You make a difference. And so, again, we are encouraging you to use it. We will be there to answer questions for you, to help you harness that power, and to elbow it and kick it and put it in all the right places to make a difference. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you and your impact in the Florida Capitol. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. And we'll drop some links in the chat as well for folks who do want to get involved. I know right now it's so tempting to just doom scroll, feel defeated, but there is a place for you in this fight. There are so many ways that you can get involved. So we'll be dropping a link to our 2026 Legislative Session Hub, where you can look at our priority bills, access a wonderful toolkit on how to engage with the legislative process, and so much more. So please check that out if you do have questions. We will be continuing the series, this town hall series, every other Thursday until the end of session. So you can be briefed on what happened at the Capitol each week, what bills are moving, and how you can get involved. I also want to highlight 2 other virtual events we have coming up. Next week, we have a Government 101 training. We'll walk through what session looks like, what the legislative process looks like, and that's great for anyone who might be new to it or might need a refresher. And then we'll also be looking at each issue area throughout session with our priority issues: voting and democracy, reproductive freedom, immigration. And we'll be talking about which bills we're seeing and how you can help get in the fight with us. So please, 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 if you haven't gotten involved before, if this is your first time, tuning into session or getting into this work, we would love to speak with you, love to work with you. So please reach out. You can also sign up to volunteer on our website. And we have so many things going on, so we would love to be in contact. And I think that's the end of our questions. So I do want to turn it over to the audience just to see if we have any questions that we can answer before we close out tonight. All right, not seeing any questions at the moment.
I think that means everybody's busy signing up, Madeline.
I think it means that, definitely. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to our live stream tonight. I want to have a big, big thank you to our panelists. These are 3 of the most hardworking people you can find. So it's really an honor to have you here tonight to talk about legislative session. And I do just want to give one final moment if anyone wants to give any final thoughts before we close out.
I just want to say thank you in advance for the way I know Floridians will show up. We are not ones to sit back and just tolerate having our rights stripped from us. We are not ones to sit back and let somebody else define who we will be. So I just want to thank you because I know you're going to be there. I know you're going to show up. I know you're going to call. I know you're going to write. I know you're going to join the webinars. And I know you're going to, do all of the things, not by yourself, but you're going to bring a whole crew with you. And that's where our power lies. That truly is where it is. We are a government that is by-in for the people, and that only exists if we make it so.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your night. We'll see you soon.